Where's Paul? Welcome.
Brahmacho Prokadhipati Sahampati Katanjali Anadhikaram Ayachata Santitho Satta Parajakka Jatika Dese Tu Dhammam Anukampimam Pajam.
You still studying Pali? Yeah. How many years has it been?
8 years.
8 years. So you could have a conversation with Amarasiri maybe. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Hello everyone on Zoom. Hello Paul. This is Paul. He's a great being, Bodhisattva. Let's just do the easy ones first. On our chanting, who is the Lord of Death? Yama. You don't want to run into him in a back alley. So it comes from Indian mythology. It's not much used in Theravada. Where it's used is in Tibetan Buddhism and Tantra. So this fearsome fellow, but I won't go into that. So that's an easy one. And then there's another easy one. But I remember reading, why do we chant in Buddhism? I remember reading about Thomas Merton's impressions of the chanting and singing Gethsemane, and him reflecting that it was an act of no self, i.e. the community coming together in unison with one voice. Does this aspect of chanting together exist in Buddhism? Yes. I love those answers. So go to YouTube, look up Buddhist chanting, and you get millions of monks and monasteries and chanting of all manner. We do a lot of chanting. I don't, because my voice is gone. But Amarasiri, you guys do a lot of chanting, don't you? You know. Okay, so is intuition, this inner compass, a stage of direct knowing of the way things are? Could you talk a little more about how a fulfilled heart doesn't have desire? So I'll kind of see what we can organize from that. I never know. I never know. So let me see. Let's think about, how about confidence? So we're probably all the same. When I began as a novice at Wat Pah Pong, I had always had faith. Some crazy, irrational faith that wasn't really me, to totally change my life and put myself in the most austere and difficult environment for a fellow that was sort of normally hedonistic. So what was that? Well, it must have been some underlying, I mean, it's so long ago I can't remember, but there was I can remember some of the reasons that was there. So there was something that took me to Wat Pah Pong. Now what was that? Was that intuition? Or is it the Lord Yama saying you better get over there? Or I don't know. So there is more that goes on in one's life that maybe is on the surface that we can see. And then at say, in Wat Pah Pong, I had a lot of doubts, but I never doubted my teachers, so that was a gift. So their confidence imbued a tremendous amount of perseverance and determination in me. So that's one way we get confidence, that we contact texts that make a lot of sense, or teachers who give us the kind of okay, or like say, like if I go to Ajahn Chah and say, I'm a basket case. This is so difficult. I can't do this. And he would chuckle. You know, he didn't feel sorry for me at all. And he'd say, well, you know, you never develop your mind. What did you expect? Oh, yeah, that's true. And yet he had confidence in me. He'd say, well, if you just create the causes and conditions, and then 5 years, you'll probably be more calm. So it wasn't like, you're out of here in 3 months, mate. You'll be fine. No, this is a marathon. And he was quite straight about that, but not in a brutal way. In a way of wisdom and experience. So I was maybe the 10th Westerner to arrive there. We were 5 there, and all kind of a bit loopy in our own funny ways. And he kind of started to just tune into where Westerners were at, and he could see that we were over intellectual and thought a lot. And so then he would craft his responses to us according to our needs, and that of course came from his confidence, his insight. But all the time there was a sense of, you can do this. It's not easy, but you can do this. It was never like, oh, Viradhammo, you might as well, you might as well go back and smoke dope. You're just never going to make it. Never was there any of that. There was always the kind of a tough, quite often very tough admonishment for heedlessness, or heedlessness. Is that the way? Quite tough, but it was never inappropriate, at least not from what I sensed. And then the example of him as a human being was like, yeah, I want that. I really want some of that. And I had never seen that really in anyone. And then about a year later, I met Ajahn Sumedho. He was on pilgrimage in India, and I got to know him. I said, I like some of that too. and so confidence or fulfillment or intuition, what is it about my own makeup that could tune in to these two wonderful beings, and why did I end up there, and why did I stay? I don't know, but certainly their influence was lifetime influence. So with Ajahn Chah, you'd be in your kuti and nothing would be going right. Like hot season was just brutal. Like upstairs. So I didn't have a fan in Thailand. But it was just so hot, and the air in northeast Thailand is just so dead. So dead. So you're trying to get some kind of samadhi going, and you just end up putting your head in a bucket to cool off. So it's very, very austere and tough. And there'd be Ajahn Chah, just ebullient, just chuckling away with the villagers, and or just really giving a tough talk and sitting in long hours. So, well, okay, if he can do it, or other monks doing it. So there was a a whole society, a whole society that encouraged that. So my own lack of confidence, my own lack of fulfillment, my own doubts, massive doubts, were always subsumed under these larger beings, much, much larger than my own doubts, and they could always kind of help me along. So just like going to Ajahn Chah's kuti and sitting there and watching him interact with lay people was just so peaceful. Just so peaceful. And so that kind of, for me, was fulfilling, but it wasn't really my own peace, oddly enough. It wasn't something that I had worked on. It was something that someone else gave me by just being there. And it wasn't just peace, it was love too. It was kind of deep, deep compassion. So then from this person or these texts, which I have faith in, it doesn't mean I have confidence, but I do have faith, and I begin to have an allegiance to listen to these words, listen to these teachings in a way that I start to implement them, right? I mean, that's how we operate. And so even though my meditations were, quote, unsuccessful, Ajahn Chah's words, well, you messed around for all these years, never trained your mind, develop patience. Otton. And, okay, now that's not a highly esoteric teaching. Not very complicated. I knew enough Thai to understand it, and it became like a mantra for many, many of us. What ton? What ow? What ow is allow? And coming from him, you kind of trusted it. Coming from someone else, you said, well, just endure. I said, it's all very well nice for you, but from him, so that's faith, isn't it? That's kind of a faith to do something very, very difficult. And then slowly through, and also I think Ajahn Chah's and Lompa Sumedho's, why do we use Ajahn, why do we use Lompa? I don't know. I use Lompa Cha too, Lompa Sumedho, those are titles from Thailand. But anyway, because both of them were very keen on reflection rather than belief. Now the thing about belief is, like in our chant on loving kindness, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one having clarity of vision is not born again into this world. I mean, why is that in there? There's all these beautiful intonations of love and compassion, and like a mother would love her child, and that goes in there. Well, because fixed views blind, and belief which is not tempered with reflection is a cul-de-sac of fundamentalism, isn't it? Or conspiracy theories, if you want. And that you can see how destructive that whole, holding to a view, I'm right, you're wrong, is not Buddhism, not liberating Buddhism. And you kind of see it in the media, it's kind of frightening. But anyway, it was never I could see that my confidence, I've never been confident about rebirth, because I don't know. Right? And I realized, well, it's a belief that I don't believe or disbelieve, but it doesn't play large in my own practice, because I can't know that. I can't possibly know that. So we use it, someone's having a bad time, oh, it's your karma. Okay. But to me, it doesn't really bring confidence. So where I found confidence was not in the belief structures of Buddhism, and I didn't even go there very much, but in the very existential exercises of suffering and the end of suffering that I could look at. And so now with the encouragement of Lompa Sumedho, Lompa Cha, and now using the teaching in a very contemporary way, because sometimes I'd read the text and I said, what is this Victorian language and what are they talking about? And get some translations, will you? It's got a grumbling mind, and because I would get confused. It seems so convoluted. And then someone like Luang Por Chah, Luang Por Sumedho say, no, this is what it means. Oh, yeah, I get it. And so the confidence in both their practice and their insight, and then their reflection on how you might use this pragmatically, built more confidence in me. So then I had more tools for, like, dependent origination. It was very difficult to get the head around. And Luang Por Sumedho explained that to me. Luang Por Chah would talk about it. Luang Por Buddhadasa. And so then I started to have the same, at least, entry into the mind because of those teachers. And then I started to have my own insights. I could say, oh yeah, I get it. And those insights weren't experiences like having a lovely blissful meditation. Blissful meditation isn't necessarily insightful, is it? It's just blissful meditation. But what's insight really brings confidence. You say, yeah, that's the way it works, yeah. So that requires both a teaching and the capacity to reflect on a teaching, bring it inward, and then sustain that perspective on your inner experience rather than just getting scattered into all kinds of perspectives. That's perhaps in modern day spirituality, there's so much available that you could get very scattered in different kinds of concepts, which then they might not be wrong, but you wouldn't have that kind of honing in quality. So then, because Luang Por Sumedho has always emphasized Four Noble Truths, so then constantly going that, so then insight starts to, you can see. So awareness starts to be imbued with wisdom or insight. So awareness now takes on a more profound perspective than it was when I started. I could understand what awareness was in a kind of way, but then when conditions came, there wasn't the insight to how to deal with them. So this question about intuition, I don't really know what intuition is, and I use it sometimes, but no one seems to really give me an answer. But Luang Por Sumedho titled a book Intuitive Awareness, right? And I never actually asked him, I should ask him what he mean by that, but I think it means that the awareness which is imbued with wisdom, which is imbued with insight, and that can be ineffable. But I found that through my teachers' recommendations, my own readings, my own practices, insights began to arise, and the path began to be more clear. What I need to do in my case. And the things which didn't work just kind of fell away. And to me, that was intuition too. I try something, and I just know it can't be it, and it wouldn't work. And so our the path that we develop individually, based on these principles, has to be really about our continual insights into our suffering and the end of suffering. So then, for me, like, confidence can build, like, let's say, I decided to try to learn how to make furniture. So I did that for, 10 years or something. And that built a lot of confidence. Because my mind said, you can't do this. I said, okay, I did it. And it was fun, and I learned a lot. But that confidence is not a refuge. Because, like, if I get Parkinson's or something like that, I'm not going to be using the chisels. So that confidence is fragile in the sense that, sure, I could do that, but it's not really liberating. So now I'm playing around with weaving, and that's fun. I'm getting confidence in that. And that's good for my character. It's good on that kind of personality, but that's not really a Buddhist insight. Whereas Buddhist insight is then where you really start to fulfill the heart with confidence, where you start not to need objects of desire. You can have them, and there's nothing wrong with them, but there isn't that compelling need because the heart feels fulfilled. And so I would say, like, obviously, the insight into three characteristics, anicca, dukkha, anatta, And Luang Por Sumedho, like a lot of his early talks in Chithurst, he would say, what do Buddhas know that others don't know? That which has a nature to arise has a nature to see and is not self. And oh yeah, okay. And then taking that perspective and seeing that is true, the mind begins to not grasp all the defilements that we have, and they begin to fade. So you have this idea in Buddhism of anusaya, latent tendencies, which are the tendencies which are historically conditioned into our minds, our prejudices and biases and our emotional hang-ups and all the rest of that, how our personality gets born, and they're constantly being triggered. And then with that you have this insight, this is not me, not mine. This is not me, not mine. It's changing. Let go. What comes goes. And that insight is constantly applied to these anusaya as they come through the mind. And as you have confidence in that application, then the anusaya begin to cease. I think we all seen that, right? Your fears are less, your delusions are less, the self-hatred is less, all of that begins to cease. And so there's now the confidence, not just of insight, but hey, this works. This gives results, this pays dividends. This is all right. And so obviously confidence grows in that way. And so I think that part of the practice for me was just kind of working out all the negative emotions that were kind of stuck in consciousness, which we all have to work through. And that takes a long time, at least for me. And then I think there's just a kind of stability, isn't there? There's a kind of stability. This does work. So there's confidence. And then I think Luang Por Dun's statement of the Four Noble Truths is the mind going outside is the cause. The result of the mind going outside is suffering. The mind knowing the mind is the path. The result of the mind knowing the mind is the end of suffering. And then that insight becomes like kind of foreground, background. Just becomes, don't go out there. And whether it's doubt or whether it's whatever the mind is trying to create in terms of suffering, don't go there, don't pick it up. And so the mind has more acuity, more confidence. And again, it's intuitive awareness, which Luang Por used. I would think that's what he's talking about. Your intuition knows, no, it's not out there. It's not in objects. Objects are sure, make a piece of furniture and weave a rug. Those are objects. That's the conventional world. And so I would say that's hugely a huge sense of confidence and fulfillment, because now the heart's fulfillment isn't dependent on objects. You kind of just, this insight, it's not about that. It's about this. And so the heart becomes more and more fulfilled. And also, at the same time, as the fears and self-delusions fall away, then compassion is the natural outcome. Because it just seems nature, doesn't it? When I'm not self-concerned all the time, and I'm just sitting here, and someone's having a rough time, the heart just responds with compassion. I don't know why it is, but it's cool. It is, isn't it? Like, if you're not thinking about yourself. If you're thinking about yourself, it's very depressing. But if you're not just, my practice isn't going well, if someone breaks their leg, my practice isn't going well. But if you're not thinking about, your mind is now liberated from this need to objectify your identity. You're just at home with the way things are. Then it seems to me, then if someone gets hurt, there's the response of compassion. If someone gets enlightenment, there's the response of joy, and there's peace, and so on. So that is the natural outcome, and that's fulfilling, very fulfilling, much more fulfilling than the baubles of consumerism, much more. Which doesn't mean you can't buy this or that, but it doesn't become very, very important. And then I'd say in one of the kind of discussion sessions we talked about, is there really a background and a foreground? Or is it all one? And those are the ideas of non-duality that come up in most traditions. And that's when the mind has to be very, very quiet. And then you can say, yeah, well, is there a doer? Is there a background? Is there a foreground? And then leave that up to you. But the kind of entry into the path, Theravada Buddhism is a gradual path. We say it's like a beach that slowly goes into the ocean rather than a cliff. I certainly see that in my case, but the building of confidence wasn't a result of taking dogmatic positions. Actually, it's the opposite. So I can, people ask me questions about karma and rebirth. I always have doubts because I don't know. But if they ask me, is it okay to kill a rabbit? I said, no. Don't kill rabbits. Don't do that. That I'm confident of. That's true. So in your own practice, wherever you're at, if there's a huge upheaval of anusaya, of latent tendencies, then have the confidence to say this is purification. Things are ceasing, they're arising. It's not me, not mine. Not me, not mine. Anatta lakkhana, not me, not mine. And you still have responsibility for it because there is individuality. That's the sort of paradox. But individuality does not mean self-identity. Like I can, certainly my experience in this room is through this body, but the body can be known as an object in awareness. Self-identity with it, oh my poor knees, oh my poor bum, it's so my poor old, all that kind of whining and so on. So there's individuality and there's awareness. So like one of the questions here was around silence. I think I've confused more people on that than helped them. The silence in awareness is not complete silence, but as being the witness in the background to the stream of consciousness and thoughts. Is that correct? Yeah, I think that's correct. The silence in awareness, is that different from the sound of silence that Ajahn Sumedho has mentioned? So, I think Longpo refers to it in two ways, but Amita, you can check when you're in Amravati and ask him. I think he refers to it as no thought, and then also as a kind of useful nimitta, the ringing in the back of consciousness when there is no thought. Because when you let go of kind of going out into sense world and you just are very, very receptive, then you can hear it, can't you? It's just a kind of electric vibration, or they call it nada in yoga, and many schools of yoga use that. So he used that as a kind of almost like a sign of the mind being empty of thought, or he turned to that to not turn towards thought, and develop that very, very strongly in committee meetings and all kinds of interesting places like that. So there's that. But I think it can be problematic, and you try to get that, and it becomes this experience of listening. But then just the sense of presence with no thought, or just the stillness of being. That's a good way to look at it too, the stillness of being. So to the question, how the fulfilled heart doesn't have desire, it's because the pleasures of the senses are actually pretty coarse. And even though one kind of might go there, it's like, that's really coarse actually. Whereas the pleasure of compassion, it's a beautiful kind of human possibility, or the the openness of joy or the pleasure of peace. Right? That's much, 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 much more attractive. So the desire, the mind going out into desires becomes less and less, it's just not where to go. It's just not worth it. And so it's not a rejection of desire, but rather it's like you don't want to play with the dinky toys anymore. Did you ever have dinky toys? Remember that? Oh, it's good and fun. It's true, isn't it? No, this peacefulness, this open-heartedness, yeah. And I think that coming to that is also, it's a part of the confidence. So there's insight, and then the insight informs awareness. So the awareness is more intuitive, more understands the path as you negotiate your life, what you need to do, what you need to kind of do. And that begins to allow the kind of really heavy kamma of gross emotions to fall away, to cease, to go their own way. The mind has more and more space, silence. The reflective mind is then more malleable. It can see more refinement. There's more quietness that leads to more compassion. So it's a really very natural path. It's not a path that's just like kind of really constructing things and building things. It's more like a natural evolution of what peace is about. So I hope I answered this. Okay, and that's that. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, that was that. That's it. I'll end there.
Annamayam Dhammakataya Sadhu Karam Dadamase Sadhu 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 Anumodami.
So Venerable Padipo and I have to just